Jon Machota, the Dallas Cowboys beat writer for The Athletic, joins us. And I go right to you to decipher what I missed, John, because after a game, answering that question, I would have been okay with the no comment there. John, what is Micah Parson saying after this game? And did we mince his words up? Because that's what he's saying the media does. They minced up my words.
So, first of all, there's never any no comment with Micah Parsons, which I can't complain. I mean, for our job, you love that. So that's not happening. There's a reason he has his own podcast, and he does it during the week. And I don't think there's a lot of players that would do that. And I don't think there's a lot of teams that want their star players doing that. But it is the Cowboys, so that's part of it. And so this is some good promotion for his podcast later today. But with that being said, it's hard to, whether you read that quote or you listen to it and not thinking it's taking a little bit of a shot at Mike McCarthy, especially because of where he's at, final year of his contract. The team's obviously struggling. I don't think he meant it. I don't think he meant it as harshly as it sounds. But if you're Mike McCarthy and you hear that, there's no way you're pleased by that. And I get what he's saying about, Zach Martin putting in the work on the field as a player. Mike McCarthy's never played in the NFL, but he's a longtime NFL head coach. He's one of the winningest coaches in the NFL. He's won a Super Bowl. He's obviously put in a lot of work. And so I just don't think the timing's great for that. But that clip right there is exactly what the Dallas Cowboys are. Like, even when things aren't going well, there's always something else that comes along with it. And most teams aren't like that. Usually when most teams are 3-6, you stop talking about them. With the Cowboys, oftentimes nationally especially, they get leaned into.
Yeah, but John, it seems to me that a lot of people are saying that Mike McCarthy may have lost the locker room. To me, if anyone asks me a question about my head coach, even after a loss, I'm going to defend him if I know the effort, the time, everything that he puts in. You'll find ways to defend him. But to me, I thought that these comments by Micah Parsons were kind of indicative on what's going on behind the scenes in Dallas, that this is a locker room that may have lost faith in its head coach.
Yeah, and I can easily see how it would be interpreted that way, especially with the way that they're playing on the field. So, he has the right to clear that up. But with that clip, it's hard to sit there and say anyone's completely taking it out of context because of everything you just said. Things aren't going well. And so you're specifically asked about your head coach who is in the final year of his deal. That's not really what you want to hear if you're the coach or heck, if you're the front office or your other players in the locker room. I mean, that's arguably your most valuable player saying that. And so it's not a great look. And I'm interested to see what Micah says to try and clarify it. But to your point, maybe that is an example of things behind the scenes being worse than we think right now, because there haven't been many players that have said anything that along those lines to make you think that. But the product on the field looks that way, especially the product at home. I mean,
right.
There isn't a team. How do you go from winning 16 consecutive games over a 2 periods, and then all of a sudden you get blown out by the Packers in the playoffs and you've never recovered from that, and then you just continue to get blown out at home? Like the switch like that, no one in the Cowboys organization been able to put their finger on it, and that's the biggest question, and no one has an answer for it.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. We're talking to Jon Machota, Dallas Cowboys beat writer for The Athletic. I'm glad you brought that up. Is that it's not as if they lose games bad on the road, right? They're getting beat up at home. Like, you're supposed to be able to defend home, and they're not doing that. But that being said, John, with the news that Dak Prescott will end the season on IR, this is now a Cooper Rush, Trey Lance football team. I'm not so sure they can show me enough that Mike McCarthy will be awarded possibly another season, or they re-sign him back as the head coach. So I say, what are the Cowboys possibly playing for now at 3-6? Yes, I've seen teams come back from 3-6, but I don't know if this team has the ability to. So what am I looking at now with the Cowboys sort of moving forward?
Yeah, there's no reason for anybody to think that they're all of a sudden going to turn this around. This has been heading in this direction for a while. And again, to your point, like, there's levels to this. These aren't close losses where they're just not, a different play here and one less turnover there. Their last 2 home games, they've turned the ball over 5 times in each game. And so I understand that the Lions won last night doing that, that's very unconventional. You're not going to win many games doing that. And so you have that going on. So it's then the fact that you want to go with the storyline of Cooper Rush is won games for them in the past.
Right.
But those teams in the past had a better defense. They had a run game. This team doesn't have that. There's no real signs to think that they're going to win any more than maybe 4 or 5 games this season. You look at the rest of the schedule, they got the Giants and they got the Panthers. Those are their 2 most winnable games. They should win those even with this team, but you can't tell me that that's even guaranteed. And beyond that, they won't be picked to win any of those other games, and they could get just as ugly as what the game was yesterday.
Well, what about next week in the Battle of the State of Texas, right? Dallas Cowboys at home taking on the Houston Texans. Okay, that's the one where it's always been what the Cowboys have been, right? Big brother, and Houston Texans your little brother. That's how Monday Night Football kind of feels like next week, John, that this could be one of those games where some decisions will have to be made, because I don't know what the Cowboys kind of do going forward the rest of the season. This is still a brand, but when you're putting that type of product out and you're looking at a team that has a young quarterback in CJ Stroud, I know they lost last night, but they've have an opportunity. They're going in the right direction, and yet the Cowboys may be going in the opposite direction. I think their next game is probably the most critical game of the season. If you win it, you're kind of still in it. You lose it, it's all about next season now.
Yeah. In terms of the first part of your question about, the big brother, little brother, I will say that just because it's pro football and the teams, the players, everybody changes so much, it isn't the same as, Michigan State, Florida State.
Okay.
But for Jerry Jones, it'll bother him a lot if they get destroyed by the other team in state in his building again. So that is one of those things where it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to that, because clearly the Texans are a better team right now. And there's no reason why anyone should pick the Cowboys to beat them. But I don't get the sense that there'll be many storylines from the players talking about how this is some big rivalry or anything like that. I think they're pretty frustrated that they can't get a win, that this thing is sliding in the wrong direction. They are getting some players back healthy, but the problem is even early on in the season, when they did have just about everybody, they were still getting blown out. And the worst one really is that game against the Saints. You got blown out at home against the Saints. You had all of these players we're talking about that were injured or are coming back. They were out there. You got destroyed by the Saints, and they were the first team to fire their head coach, and for a period of time didn't win another game until they fired their coach after that. And so that's the one that will stand out, of where there's really no coming back from that. I understand sports, crazy things happen. There's nothing crazy, Pat, that's about to change with this Cowboys season.
Dallas Cowboys beat writer for The Athletic, Jon Machota, joining me, Kirk Morrison, here on the Rich Eisen Show. A tradition unlike any other. And I say that because daylight savings time, we know when it comes. It comes around every single year, twice a year. You lose an hour or you gain an hour. But during football season, it's fall back. So when it falls back, that means that the sun usually is setting at a much earlier time than expected. We all know that the 3:25 p.m. Central kick in Dallas is sometimes one of those games where the sun is peeking right through those windows at Cowboys Stadium, John. And there's every single year, there's a player who loses the ball in the sun. Just so happened, it happened again, like a tradition unlike any other. CeeDee Lamb loses a ball in the sun that could have helped the Cowboys. I'm not saying that would have changed the game around, but definitely would have put them in a better situation. He loses the ball in the sun, and the first question Jerry Jones is asked, hey, why don't you guys put the curtains up? Well, why did you build the stadium this way? It happens every single year, John. What is the defense from Jerry Jones on why this continues to keep happening every single season?
So this is interesting. So he talked outside the locker room for about 5-6 minutes and was done and went walking away. And a few of us that have covered the team for a while know that it's never really done. Just keep walking with Jerry. He's probably going to keep answering questions. And for our business, he's been great at that. And so as a few of us start walking with him, he brings it up himself.
Oh, he gave you a curtain call?
He turned around. He said, by the way. So he had something he wanted to get off his chest. He said, by the way. And so you're just sitting there like, oh, okay, well, where's this about to go? He brings up that the curtains had no impact on this game, and not having curtains and the sun coming through is not an issue because both teams have to play. Yes, and exactly this picture right here. Both teams have to play in this. But see, I'm glad you brought this picture up because
But look
Jerry
at
likes
the official,
that.
though. Look at the official on the right side. I'm sorry for the viewers,
Right.
I mean, for the listeners, but for our viewers, look at the official. He's got hand. The official can barely even see and officiate the game because of the light that's coming through from the stadium.
That photo is crazy.
So this is a stadium that I'm from the Metro Detroit area. I've lived down here for 14 years. And so the thing I always say about AT&T Stadium that stands out to me is that it's an amazing stadium. If you have never been there and you get a chance, definitely go. It's a great place to watch a football game. But the thing is that there's not a lot of history in the stadium. Like when I moved down here, I'm thinking, oh, there's going to be a lot of like Roger Staubach and Troy and Emmett and Tom Landry and stuff like that. And there's like a Tom Landry statue outside, but there's just not a lot of that in the stadium. In the stadium, there's a lot of artwork, and they are very proud of the artwork. And I bring that up to say that I've always believed that Jerry likes the way that looks on TV and in different images, the way the sun is coming in and setting like that. And I can give you one example on it. In that Tom Brady documentary, I think it was in 2021, I think it's called like Man in the Arena. Yeah. One of the main shots that they have is Tom playing there in a very similar shot to what you just showed, where the sun is kind of setting and it looks cool for a picture. But if you're the owner and general manager of a football team, it shouldn't matter what looks good for a picture. It should be about winning football games. And the thing that bothers Cowboys fans the most, because as you mentioned, this comes up quite often, is I've been to concerts there. I've been to NCAA basketball tournament games there. They have curtains. They put them up for these things. So he's choosing. It's not like he's being cheap and I just don't want to put up, I don't want to buy curtains. They have them. He doesn't want to put them up. And here's the other part of it. The way Jerry Jones is, the reason that this thing keeps becoming a bigger and bigger topic and the reason it won't change is because it's become such a big deal. And now if Jerry puts that up, then it proves that he was wrong and he is not going to admit he's wrong.
Came back with an encore, right? I was just laughing about that. Walks away, comes back. Hey, I got one more thing to tell y'all. Jon Machota, he covers the Dallas Cowboys for The Athletic. A couple more for you, John, because obviously we're all awaiting this podcast from Micah Parsons where he's going to clarify his statements a little bit more from yesterday. But at the end of the day, Micah Parsons is still going to be a Dallas Cowboy. He kind of threw that in there. Did he just retire Zach Martin too? Like Zach Martin last year? I'm like, wait, did Zach Martin tell us this is his last season? But moving forward, Micah Parsons does have a contract situation that will still need to be resolved. And so I ask you, what do we see happen first? Is the contract for Micah Parsons coming down, or obviously a new head coach for the Dallas Cowboys?
Oh, I mean, with the way things are heading, it's going to be tough for them not to go in a different direction at head coach. And so I think, like you said, Micah knows he's not going anywhere. Jerry Jones loves Micah. He loves players that can stir it up. He probably doesn't mind at all that he's doing this podcast. Jerry doesn't mind any of that. I've always believed some of his favorite players are the ones that not only are some of the best Cowboys players, but they're the ones that like to stir it up the most, And so because of that, I don't see a time where Micah's gone. There's a lot of talk, over the last, year or so about what if the Cowboys tried to trade Micah and get a boatload of picks and try and rebuild through that. Jerry's not doing that. Jerry's not getting rid of Micah Parsons, and Micah Parsons knows he's not going anywhere. And let's be honest, Micah Parsons loves the Cowboys for their brand as well. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. He was crying in the draft room when it was becoming possible that the Cowboys were going to be the team that got him. He wanted to go to the Cowboys more than anywhere because that's the thing. Like the brand is also huge. Like there's a lot of things like Micah Parsons does and says that if he's doing this in Jacksonville, they're not as big as of a headline. But with the Cowboys, it's a big deal, and he feeds into that. Now the argument can be made. I don't know how much that lends itself to winning championships, but you can also say since they drafted Micah Parsons up until this season, they were 12 wins, 12 wins, 12 wins. He clearly is a good player on the field, but there is a part where you wonder, is this causing more distractions than are needed?
John, I hate to throw salt on the Cowboys' wound, but I'm going to throw some salt on the Cowboys' wound because yesterday, obviously, Ezekiel Elliott, 6 carries, 22 yards. Then you look on the opposite side, Saquon Barkley had 14 carries, 66 yards, and you see how impactful of a running back that acquisition was for the Philadelphia Eagles. And it also points back to the Dallas Cowboys and not acquiring Derrick Henry. I know you've heard this storyline, this narrative all season long, but in a team that was going supposedly all in, and to that be something that has really held them back is their rushing attack. what do the Cowboys think, or how do they handle that going forward with Ezekiel Elliott, which seems to be sort of a problem? He said he's missed meetings. He's just not all in. Like, he's not the same Zeke anymore. And also it starts to see like he may be a problem within the locker room. How does this end, this this reconnection between Ezekiel Elliott and the Cowboys?
Jerry loves Zeke, so that's a big part of this as well. The owner and general manager wants him there, so the owner and general manager is going to get what he wants. So because of that, I see Zeke making it at least to the end of the season. But pointing back to the offseason, you bring up Derrick Henry. I mean, they obviously made a huge mistake by not putting more resources into running back, whether it be the draft the last 2 years. They knew last year that they were only going to have Tony Pollard for one more year. They probably should have drafted a running back earlier last year, and when they didn't, they probably needed to do it this year. And that was a huge mistake. And I'm not saying that Derrick Henry would be having the same season he's having in Baltimore, but he'd be a lot better than what they have right now. And the fact that even if you couldn't afford Derrick Henry, the fact that they didn't talk to him or talk to his agent about signing him when he clearly really wanted to come to Dallas, he has an offseason home in Dallas. It's hard to look past the fact that he has the same agent as Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott's agent has won 2 massive battles against Jerry Jones that I wonder if anybody in the business world has won the battles that Dak's agent has won against Jerry. And so there was definitely a period in the offseason where there wasn't a lot of communication back and forth. And so it's hard to believe that they just didn't pick up the phone too, because they're like, we're not dealing with this situation right now. And so it looks bad. It really does, especially in every week that goes by and you see Derrick Henry playing as well as he is, that it just makes it worse. And then also just the fact of other teams that had a running back in the offseason. And so, that was a huge swing and miss by the Cowboys, but it wasn't just running back. They needed to do way more in the offseason. And other than really bringing in Eric Kendricks at linebacker, they didn't do very much to replace the guys they lost in free agency. And that's certainly one of the biggest reasons that they are where they are right now.
Unfortunate for the Cowboys, but we still going to talk about them Cowboys. John, I appreciate the time. I know you have appointment viewing or listening later for the Micah Parsons podcast. So I appreciate the time, and we'll catch up with you soon. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun talking to you.